Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk about session 4. And in this session what you're going to tackle is the role of the local church in Christian growth. What part does the church play in Christians maturing into Christ-likeness? So the main passage for this session is Ephesians 4:11 through 16. And your goal in this session is to help students see that the preaching and godly example from our pastors and the ministry of other members of the church are all important parts of maturing in Christ. Now, with your opening question, just like you've done in the first 3 sessions, you want to help your students help establish and understand what your students think about church. So some follow-up questions you might ask them as they're thinking about this and as they're giving you their answers. You might ask them, okay, so why do we go? What are we doing while we're there? Is it important? Just to kind of further establish for you as you lead your group through this material, what it is your students actually think about the church. Now you're going to open up the session talking about the role of pastors and their part in helping us grow and mature in Christ. But also you're going to address our own responsibilities as it relates to the preaching ministry of our churches. This is really going to come to a head in questions 3 and 4, where you're going to address wrong ideas that people tend to have about pastors, how we tend to think about our pastors as the ones responsible for all the ministry of the church. But instead, you're going to show that instead, pastors are a gift to the church from Christ to help the saints and equip them for the work of ministry. And so from there, you're going to get into our responsibilities as it relates to growing through preaching. This is going to address our affections and our desires. It's also going to address things that Christians can do and should do during preaching, and so that we are seeking growth through the preaching of the Word. And then in questions 5 through 7, you're going to be dealing with ways that Christians minister to and help one another grow in the faith. So as we are equipped by our pastors, how do we care for one another and help one another grow and mature in Christ? That'll lead you to questions 8 and 9, where you're going to tackle the role of Christians as participants in the worship service. And it's going to be a really important section of this lesson. Not that the other parts weren't, but this part is really going to be, I think, challenging an idea that so many Christians in the West tend to have about participation in a worship service, what that actually means. We want students to understand that worship is not something that Christians observe. It is something that we participate in. And so this should produce a change in how we think about services at our churches. And this is going to include an illustration to try to help you drive this point home. What is happening in our participating in the church as it relates to our ministry to others around us, as well as what does it mean for the main aim of our being there, which is the worship of God. We don't observe, we participate. In the wrap-up, you're going to challenge students to really consider their daily and weekly schedules. And so what we're driving at here is, again, how are your students thinking about church services? Are they thinking about them as just another activity that they can attend at their convenience, or as something that Christians are that's not only good for Christians to be at because it helps them grow, but actually commanded to be at by the Scriptures? And so this reflection question pushes on this. So you'll need to help students think through the difference in seeing church as an activity versus essential to growth in Christ-likeness. So you'll ask them some questions to try to help them kind of see the difference. If it's just an activity, well, do you only go when your friends are there? You know, if it's just an activity, a question you might ask is, do you only go when there is something happening at the church that you're interested in? And so again, this is going to drive us back to our affections. If we have joy in Christ, we will want to be growing and maturing into His likeness. If we have joy in Christ and love for Him, then we're going to want to be with the people of God, worshiping God, out of a desire for obedience to God and a desire to mature in Christ. Guys, I hope this weekend is a great weekend for you. I would want to encourage you now, begin praying for your own heart, that your desire in teaching the students would be to see them grow in love for God and to see worship of God increase in their lives and in the lives of the people that they encounter. I want to encourage you to begin now praying for the students in your group and the things that they're going to hear, that the Lord would use His Word to draw those who are outside of Christ to saving faith. And I'm praying for you and hope that you have a great weekend leading students to serve and worship the Lord.